how I broke my lease and escaped the modern apartment trap in exactly 60 days. I'm not a financial guru. I'm just a finance professor who started noticing patterns most people never question, and I made this channel to share what I find. I used to fall for the trendy apartments and the shiny designs too, until I actually ran the numbers, and what I found changed how I see renting completely. Let's start with what's actually being built right now. Walk through any major city or growing suburb, and you'll keep seeing the same building. 4 or 5 floors of wood frame construction sitting on a concrete base. Architects call it a 5/1, while developers call it profitable. And they're right. These buildings aren't built to last at all. They're built to be attractive to a large investment firm, enough to lease up quickly and profitable enough to sell. Developers use what I'd call aesthetic bait. Stainless steel appliances that are the cheapest contractor models grade available. Laminate floors that look like hardwood until you live on them for 6 months. Large windows that look beautiful and absolutely destroy your energy bill. I teach my students this. Don't look at the surface of an asset. Look at what's underneath it. When you sign a lease on one of these apartments, you are not paying for quality. You're paying for everything wrapped around it that looks great on a tour and matters a lot less once you've actually moved in, and that pitch works every single time. Most people focus on the rent because that's the number they see on the listing. What catches people off guard are all the extra charges that show up after they move in. A lot of newer apartment complexes charge for things that used to be included. Valet trash might cost another $30 or $40 a month, even if the building has a trash room just down the hall. Parking often costs extra. Some buildings bundle internet into the lease whether you want it or not. Others add administrative or amenity fees on top of the advertised rent. None of these charges seems huge on their own, but together they can add a few $100s to your monthly housing cost. So, the apartment advertised for $2,000 a month may end up costing noticeably more by the time everything is added in. Nobody mentions that on the listing. This is what pushed me to start planning my exit. There's a real difference between older buildings, individually owned condos, today's mass-produced apartment complexes, and it shows in the walls. Older buildings were often constructed with thicker materials, concrete subfloors, dense insulation, and a focus on durability and comfort. They were built to last, and they were built to keep sound out. Many modern complexes prioritize speed and cost. You end up with thin drywall and minimal soundproofing. When I lived in one of those units, I could hear everything. My neighbor's phone vibrating on a nightstand, I knew their morning alarm before I knew my own schedule. Poor insulation also meant the HVAC system was constantly running. In winter, heat escaped almost immediately. In summer, the apartment held onto warmth like a greenhouse. My utility bill hovered around $550 a month just to keep a small space comfortable. On paper, the building looked premium, but in reality, the experience didn't match the price at all. I don't just look at one side of the picture because to really understand why the rental market works the way it does, you have to look at what's happening on the other side. The landlords. Social media often shows a very polished version of that world. People buying 20, 30, sometimes 50 units under 2 years. Posting receipts of properties, talking about passive income and financial freedom. What they don't show you is what's actually happening behind the numbers. A landlord buys a small multi-unit property. Upstairs rents for $2,300, while downstairs rents for $2,100. On paper, that looks solid, but once you factor in the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and ongoing maintenance, the margin can shrink quickly. Scale that up across a heavily leveraged portfolio, and the system starts to rely on everything going right. That's why a lot of landlords look wealthy in assets, but not necessarily in cash. Equity rich, but sometimes cash flow tight. The kind of situation where you're checking your bank balance before making basic expenses or using credit to cover unexpected repairs. Then something breaks a roof, a boiler or an HVAC system, and suddenly $5,000 is gone. Months of profit wiped out by one maintenance call in a single hit. So while tenants feel pressure from rising rents and costs, landlords are often dealing with a different kind of pressure, thin margins, debt, and unpredictable expenses. The trap closes in when landlords realize they didn't really buy an investment, they bought a second job. When you scale a rental portfolio too quickly without strong systems in place, you become the default operator. You're the one taking 2 a.m. maintenance calls, chasing late rent, coordinating repairs, and managing everything in between. And if properties aren't fully stabilized before tenants move in, the workload compounds. A toilet that needed replacing a few months ago, a water heater that was always going to fail, small issues that turn into recurring emergencies across multiple units. Eventually, many landlords hire property managers just to regain their time. But those fees reduce cash flow even further, tightening the same margins that made self-management stressful in the first place. The less discussed reality is that scale doesn't automatically mean success. 10 properties owned outright and managed efficiently can outperform 100 heavily leveraged units, producing marginal cash flow per door. Because in the end, it's not about how much you own, it's about what actually remains after everything is paid. When my 60 days were up, I left. I didn't move into a house or upgrade to something bigger. I just stopped paying more than I needed to feel like I had arrived somewhere, when the reality was I was standing still financially. We're often sold the idea that a modern apartment with a key fob concierge and a polished lobby is a sign of progress, that the aesthetics alone signal success. But once you look past the surface, the design choices, and the thin walls, a lot of these places are structured in a way that steadily drains money while offering convenience in return. At some point, the question becomes simple. If your apartment only exists for you to sleep in because the rest of your life happens elsewhere, who is really owning who?